Okay, so shall we start? Welcome. Thank you for registering for this webinar. Bit of housekeeping. So, we're going to be recording the webinar and we intend to host it on our YouTube channel and share some clips on social. For those of you that haven't seen the report that we're going to be talking about today, it is still available and we can send out links afterwards to everyone if you want to see the full picture. So, agendas today. Welcome and housekeeping. This is this. Welcome. Hello. House is kept. Then we're going to introduce the panelists. So we've got a fantastic panel here, a mix of marketing professionals and technology professionals. We'll then go into introducing the report, a little bit about why we've done it and how we've approached it. Then we'll dive into the report findings. We then have a panel discussion to come after that, and then we'll do Q&A. So I'm hoping that the report will take no more than, say, 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes to go through, which will leave us a lot of time for talking about what we can take away from the report and to give actionable learnings to everybody, and then obviously some time for discussion. So here's the panel. I'm John Lyons, the guy with the egg head up there. So I'm a fractional CMO. I'm an experienced marketing professional. As well as spending time working at Lego, which is what I've got in the background and which Amy always insists that I talk about. I've worked with lots of B2B professional service businesses over the years and helped them grow their business through proper commercially focused marketing. That's me, Seb.
Yeah, I'm Seb Mackay. I'm a partner at Sober. Sober does positioning and messaging for B2B companies. And so we're all about taking the sort of complex and convoluted messaging and trimming it down. I have collaborated with companies like Darktrace, Blue Vector, Cisco, and Splunk on marketing, and was also part of the founding marketing team at Endace, the packet capture company. Amy?
Hey, I'm Amy Stokes-Waters. I'm the CEO at the Cyber Escape Room company. I think I'm here because we do a bit marketing slightly differently to a lot of other cyber companies. So I'm here as a case study-ish, I think.
Excellent. And finally, and certainly not least, the devilishly handsome Robbie Clutton.
Well, thank you very much. Hi, I'm Robbie Clutton. I guess I'm the tech person. So I've got a tech background and I spent a couple of years at Sneak, which is a B2B developer security tool company, working primarily in product-led growth. So working really closely with marketing and self-service. So that's what I'll be talking about a little bit today.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. So let's dive in. So to introduce the report, so this started as something that Seb and I were talking about a while ago. So as marketers, we know the value of good market research as well as obviously the value of good marketing, which we'll talk about later. So we decided to put into practice the same tools and techniques that we would use for our clients to find out how cybersecurity is used and value marketing in order to grow their businesses. Let's talk a little about methodology. So what we did here, and again, this is classic market research, always start with diagnosis as a marketer. So we started with a series of qualitative, in-depth interviews with professionals in and around cybersecurity, working with a script so that we were able to follow the same patterns and unlock certain things, but obviously allowing ourselves to be drawn away by the specific feedbacks and the specific points we got from the different people. And then what we did from that is we used that insight to create an online survey so that we could gain more quantitative view across the board and in effect kind of validate what we're being told and question it. So that's allowed us to kind of go in there and sense check all of these things. We made the survey available and we invited people and kind of posted it out, advertised it. And as a former promotional marketing professional, as an incentive, I dug into my personal collection of Lego sets, which, having worked at Lego, I have a lot of Lego sets I still haven't opened for a prize draw. And Nate, he won the Lego set, so that was great. But so that's kind of the methodology that we've used. So it was a series of questions with text inputs and with sliders from agree to strongly disagree, classic survey. So we'll dive into the specifics shortly, but as a summary, we can see the key takeaways are that the business challenges within cybersecurity are primarily around sales. It's closing deals and lead generation. And then the clear secondary challenges were to do with branding, awareness, creating word of mouth advocacy. So marketing in effect. So we've got sales at the number one, we've got marketing at number two, and we weren't just asking sales and marketing. You'll see as we get into the questions, there were more detailed stuff as well. Some of the stuff that really came out as not shocking, but perhaps surprising, is that over 50% of the companies we surveyed have no more than one marketing hire, and almost 30% have no marketing hires at all. What we also found was there's a proliferation of talking about the features of your product or your service rather than the benefits to the people you're selling to. Now, this is kind of fairly classic in B2B and technical services, by which I don't necessarily mean technology, but I mean kind of technical services, which could be legal or accountancy, where there's deep category knowledge. It does tend to happen, but it's often a misstep, and we'll talk about that. So marketing spend, again, we found that actually not much money is being spent on marketing. So maybe that's based on the fact there's very few marketing resources, but here we've got more than 35% spending less than £5,000 a month on marketing and lead generation, and over 40% having none. So in terms of the channels that were being used for marketing, preferred channels, LinkedIn, and then events are the top marketing channels across the board. Everybody is using LinkedIn. So whether or not they have a marketing hire or whether or not they spend on marketing, they are doing marketing. So I think it's probably worth at this stage saying that there is a difference between marketing decisions and marketing hires. All businesses make marketing decisions. Your pricing is a marketing decision. Your positioning is a marketing decision. It just may not have been done by a marketing professional, and that's fine in many cases. So here what we're finding is that LinkedIn is being used and events are being used. In terms of the types of marketing being used, so performance marketing activities, kind of call to action, short term, click here to download, come to this event, they're being used much more over brand marketing. So there's not much being done to make people aware of your brand, to create salience or mental availability, as we will say in marketing. It's all about the here, the now, the click, the go, which again is not unusual for technical companies in the broadest sense, and certainly not unusual for companies that don't have marketing hires. And the last thing that we'll take out here is brand distinctiveness. So distinctiveness is all about standing out from the category set. And there is a complete lack of visual and verbal uniqueness across the sector. So Seb is a wordsmith and a brilliant wordsmith. I personally believe that copy and verbiage is more important than the visual distinctiveness. And we're finding here there's very little across the board. And we'll dive into those. So on to what the report tells us. So again, just highlighting here all of the cybersecurity business challenges. And as you can see, it's kind of sales followed by marketing. And we've got branding and awareness, we've got word of mouth advocacy, we've got product market fit. So for those of you that might not know what product market fit is, it's really where you turn your product into something that the market understands, i.e., if you're selling chips to people in Australia, rather than you saying we fry potatoes and we supply them to blah, 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 you basically put out the message that makes sense to the customer. So you are making your product fit the market. Absolutely essential to all marketing. So as I say, the big ones are all clearly sales and marketing tasks, but if we look further down, the operational things, recruitment, product development, and funding are kind of secondary, or in most cases tertiary. So we did ask for all of the challenges, and it just happens that sales and marketing have come at the top, which is useful because that's what we do. Then we looked at target customers, and we will be talking about this in the panel. So almost across the board, everybody was targeting C-suite, specifically CIO and CISO as the most suggested target customers across a number of specific industries. So you can see the industries there, which kind of suggests a category-wide focus. Everyone is going after the same people. Nobody is trying to niche. Now, it's unclear if this targeting is based on market research or market assessment, but we will discuss with the panel later whether or not we think these are the best targets to create and close deals with, because quite often your target user or the person you think is most influential isn't the person that's making the buying decision, isn't the person that's signing the checks, and it's important to be clear on that. So if we talk a little bit about positioning in the sector, so these are a couple of quotes that came out of our qualitative interviews. And yeah, some of the stuff that really came out is that, obviously cybersecurity is a serious subject. So creating engaging content kind of feels impossible. But so companies tend to emphasize the technical features rather than the benefits, which is a misstep for decision makers. As someone that is in charge of a team, but not necessarily in the team, I don't need to know how they're using it. I need to know it's going to make a difference to their day to day. I need to know it's going to have outcomes. Now, we know that the technical subject makes it hard to build trust across both the tech and non-technical audiences as well. And I guess that the hard reality is that you just can't stand out with the promises of security and peace of mind because everybody is making that same promise. So to some extent, we need to shift the focus from technical features to emotional or business or personnel benefits, and value of the product. Then we asked how they thought they were seen, how they thought their businesses were seen by their customers. So what we see here in the customers are primarily attracted to unique value propositions, expertise, and reliability. These are all common themes in customer buying behavior: quality, trust, value for money, tailored solutions, their house stakes, their hygiene factors. And the unique value proposition, as we'll find when we look at distinctiveness, doesn't really exist in this, but not only this category. Then when we look at what customers consider them as, most people think they're seen as innovative and forward thinking. Amy will be speaking about this later. She has strong feelings about this, and I agree. But what we get here is innovation, trust, customer focus. These are all kind of critical attributes, obviously, for cybersecurity providers. But are they unique? Is it something that everyone else isn't saying? We'll find out. Probably not. So then we actually ask the question boldly: is your brand distinctive? So over 64% of responses said that their brand stands out from competitors, that their brand is distinctive. 21% were honest and reported that they just didn't know if they were distinctive. And actually, a relatively low 14% got it and reported that their brand is not distinctive. Okay, so we wanted to go and cross-check this because obviously when you're surveying people, you're getting their opinion of how they think they're seen. So we used AI to find that the top UK cybersecurity companies, and we took the top six. Actually, technically, we took six of the top seven because one was a much broader business than just cybersecurity. But we took the top six that were cybersecurity businesses and we reviewed them as we would do for a client for distinctiveness. And guess what? It's a sea of same. They all look the same, they all sound the same. So what we see here immediately is that all are using a variation of dark blue, 5 of them using white as a primary color. We've got a little spattering of kind of blues, greens, reds, and oranges as accent colors, but there's really not much difference here. You're not going to really remember any of these. None of them are distinctive. When we look at the kind of the use of language, the terminology used, the most used words are security, cyber, and services, 83%, which I guess is understandable. But then we've got innovation, is it really though, at 66%, and then solutions, which is a nonsense word. It means nothing. So nobody is using any key terminology here to separate themselves. And one other thing that we always review, there's a great copywriter who is the most awarded copywriter in the history of the Cannes Lions, Steve Harrison. And he says that when speaking to consumers, you should have a ratio of 1 to 3 for when you talk about you compared to when you talk about them. So for every you, there should be 3 them. So we had a look at the kind of we, our to you, your balance. And rather than 1 to 3, which is the ideal, we've got from 2 to 6 to 1. So it's complete flip the other way and it's gone far. So again, we're talking about ourselves, we're talking about features, we're not talking about benefits, which is a missed opportunity. So let's see what kind of marketing we're doing again. So the chosen marketing channels. So obviously we know that LinkedIn and events are at the top, but then we have email with a strong showing. We have search and landing pages with a strong showing. All of those are what we'd call performance marketing. Fewer than half use channels that are successfully and traditionally used in other sectors, including other B2B sectors, such as pay-per-click, podcasts, postal direct mail, or print advertising. So again, very little aspects in terms of building a brand, building memory structures for future sales. And in terms of the activities, again, we know that events is right up there. We knew that already. But what we see here is that, we've got outbound email, we've got inbound, which is kind of white papers, gated content. We've got thought leadership, opinion pieces. They're all coming in really, really high, kind of 80%. Over 50% of businesses in the sector use PR, which is fantastic. PR is an absolutely brilliant way of getting your message out there. Although obviously it helps to have a brand as well. But only 7.1% of respondents run any brand advertising, such as even just online ads, digital display, out of home TV or radio or podcast ads. So again, very low brand building. And onto that marketing spend. So actually almost 30% are spending 50K or more monthly, which is fantastic. That's really healthy. That's a good budget to be spending. But we've got this massive, almost over a third spending less than 5K a month, and 14.3% not spending a penny on marketing each month. So it's no wonder that the marketing isn't performing. And going into the marketing hires again, so some of the interesting things when you uncover the realities here. So we asked all of the respondents whether or not they had a documented marketing strategy and a documented brand strategy. 72% said they had a marketing strategy. 64% said they had a brand strategy, but 57% only have 0 or 1 dedicated marketers. So what are they doing with the strategy? 30% have nobody. Now, it's possible that they do have strategies because new businesses will quite often bring in a consultant that will build a strategy, but they'll never execute it. It's not unusual. Seven, I see it all the time. Or it might be that actually they don't have it, but they didn't want to say that. But ultimately, what we're seeing here is kind of low investment in marketing expertise. So, in conclusion, we know that marketing plays a crucial role in the sustainable growth and success of cybersecurity businesses, but there are huge gaps in resource allocation, budget, and strategic execution. To address these areas, enhance market presence, drive sales, achieve growth, cybersecurity businesses need to consider investing more in their marketing resources, diversifying their marketing channels, developing distinctive brands. And by the way, a brand isn't a logo. The logo is the least important thing of a brand. Developing distinctive brands, focusing more on the benefits of using your service over the features, and to build trust through thought leadership. And so that brings us onto the panel discussion. So I hope that was of interest to everyone. As Seb said, please put in the questions. So let's talk a little bit. We've got a lot to unpack. So let's focus on a few things, make sure we give actionable advice. So we'll go in with the most obvious takeaway, right? Marketing spend and marketing hires. So what we found was that the spend and the hires on marketing is fairly minimal. How do we think that that is impacting effective marketing? Amy, what do you think?
Well, I mean, most we saw just from like the website stuff, everyone looks the same. I think there's a massive lack of proper marketing knowledge within the industry. So I was talking to someone yesterday, and they've kind of just shoved the youngest girl in the company in charge of their social media because, well, misogyny perhaps, but definitely ageism. Going, that's social media. That's definitely got to be a young person's kind of thing, and obviously they don't have the experience, knowledge, insights as to how to properly run marketing for a cybersecurity company.
Yeah, that's a good point. And marketing isn't just social media. There's a lot of planning and expertise and knowledge that goes into marketing. So, if we take, for example, something that marketers are very familiar with, is the long and the short of it. Short-term performance marketing and long-term brand building, where what you're actually doing with your brand building is you're creating future sales. What you're doing with performance marketing is you're just drawing down people who are in market at any given time. And what we know through research, academic research, is that in B2B, at any given time, only 5% of your absolute target market is in buying mode. So if your messaging to try to sell is only relevant to 5% of the people, what are you saying to the 95% of people? What reasons are you giving them to buy you when it's their turn to be in the 95 or to be in the 5%? Seb, what's
Yeah,
your
I mean it's a good question. I'm not sure I can answer it in the amount of time that we've got, but I think it raises a really good point around, you know, what people are saying in the market, how they're saying those things. And I think, you know, from what you showed before of the comparison of those 6 different websites with everyone sort of saying the same thing, one of the things that I'd point out there is there's a balance between, well, people justify, sorry, they purchase emotionally and justify rationally, right? We know this from consumer research. And I think you can see from those 6 websites that you showed before that they're all speaking to a sort of rational logic, which we understand, right? Because we understand that you know, we're serious businesses selling to serious businesses. But I would always argue that there is a lot of emotion that goes underneath that as well, especially in something like cyber, especially in something where you're protecting either the assets of your client or their clients. If they're a bank, you know, if you take someone like JP Morgan Chase, for example, you know, they have a really sophisticated packet capture network right across the company. And you know, JP Morgan Chase are protecting themselves with that, but they're also protecting more than themselves. You know, they're protecting other people's money. And we know that with things like GDPR breaches, you know, companies have to have they have to disclose them within 72 hours. And so there's an emotional pressure point there. Whereas cybersecurity businesses, you know, we can say to people, okay, if you're breached, and you will be breached, it's a case of when, not if. You need to know what's happened as quickly as possible. That's part of the emotional logic that I think, you know, we can play on, that those examples that you showed John missed before. Is like, what is the urgency? What is the benefit? And, you know, building that into the world of your marketing. So looking at those sort of 90% of people who you're not talking to and thinking, okay, how can we target them when they're ready? And what's the kind of language that's going to affect them at a buying level and at an emotional level?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And I mean, it brings to mind a quote which I'm probably going to butcher or paraphrase, but Jenny Romaniak, who is one of the leading academics when it comes to marketing science, she's absolutely brilliant and she's always right. Um, she said that the majority of marketing is trying to persuade people as if you're in the room with them. The reality is most brands are not in the room yet. And that's where I think the emotional builds it sort of builds the connection so that when you are ready to be persuaded, you've already got a building of trust.
I want to add one thing to that, and then Amy, I want to throw to you because I know you do marketing very differently from a lot of other companies in the industry. The company System One, which does advertising research, and are very good, and you should follow on LinkedIn if you don't already, have done qualitative and quantitative research that proves that advertising effectiveness is greater over time. So what they've said is good ads wear in, not out. So the more times people see an ad, the more effective that ad gets. And I think it's always worth telling people that, because quite often, you know, the people producing the ads, the companies or the agency, will get sick of the ad and change it out before it's actually had time to work. So if you are in a place where you can find a great ad and tie it into that messaging that we've talked about, run it into the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, well, when I'm talking to other people who ask about marketing, I always say so a few people have come to me and asked for my advice on how to market their startup, and I say, well, what do you actually do? And they're like, oh, how do you not know this? How do you not know what we do? And I'm like, well, I've never seen it advertised anywhere. I've got no idea. Like, I've got you on LinkedIn, but you don't write about it, so I've got no fucking idea. Sorry, pardon my French. Um, so I always point out, it's not like, I always say McDonald's, everyone knows who McDonald's is. Well, I still listen to adverts about them on the TV, radio, billboards, like pop-ups on my phone, websites, whatever. But I already know who they are, and they're still putting money into advertising. They're still sharing what they do because either there's a new market to capture, or they've brought a new product out, or something like that. So if I don't even know what like, I don't know who you are, and you're not sharing what you're doing, like, how am I ever going to buy anything from you?
There's been studies that have shown that stopping or slowing down on your advertising or marketing spend has a much greater impact longer term, because basically you lose all of the mental availability that you've built up over time. So once you've got it there, you basically use it or lose it.
I'm stuck posting on LinkedIn forever then, Emma.
You are stuck posting on LinkedIn forever until we start doing some out-of-home adverts.
Yeah.
Featuring Amy speaking her version of French on the tube. So I think there's another thing in terms of the marketing hires, and I talked before about how marketing is not necessarily always a function. So Robbie, you're someone that has a really good understanding of marketing. You're a senior leader in technology, but yeah, we've talked in the past about having someone on the technical side who understands marketing and the value it brings and who can bridge the gap. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think it might be a bit of an overplay to say I understand marketing, but I've kind of worked very collaboratively with marketing. So, in my role at Sneak, I was very involved in kind of building, public-facing propositions, so kind of websites and other kind of digital properties, and making sure that we are, following all the latest SEO guidance and accessibility and things like that, but then also kind of weaving them into campaigns and analytics and instrumenting our code so we could really genuinely understand kind of cohorts of users who are coming in and what they are, how they're interacting with the site, how they kind of get to that aha moment where they start to use it and the penny drops like, oh, this is the problem it's solving, and then following that through to hopefully that habit moment on the path to your product becoming sticky for that user, and hopefully turning that into a monetization event. So I think it's the sort of the integration and data capture and analytics and playing that back, and then creating those feedback loops so that you try something and you put it into production, you see how it's used in the analytics, and you use that to fuel your next decision, right? So do we go more on this campaign? Do we make the next change in whether that is kind of copy or placement of call to actions on a page or new pages, and making sure there's a really good tight feedback loop and a good collaboration human to human, and also between kind of the analytics, the production kind of software which is being created, and those kind of marketing ideas. So yeah, making sure that's all kind of it's a really joined up story, and it's not just different departments throwing stuff at the wall and then being confused that none of it's really working.
So I've got a tricky question for you then, because you do understand the value of marketing and brand. How typical do you think that is of people in the industry? Do you think you're an outlier?
I think that was quite rare from what I've seen, the places I've worked and clients that I've got, that was such a really good positive integration between those departments. So much so where each team kind of had a dedicated marketing person on each team, and they were kind of really part of the team. So rather than here's R&D and they're doing stuff, and then here's the marketing department, and maybe have a catch up once a month, they were kind of really embedded in the team, and I've not seen that anywhere before, or really since. I think that would function of a real desire and a drive to kind of build a kind of product-led growth motion where the product, they want the product to be able to sell itself, and investing in that side is an important part of that.
So in your role as a fractional CTO, are you an advocate for marketing hires? Is that something that you quite often bring up, or is that outside of your scope at the moment?
I think for clients which I've been brought into, that hasn't necessarily been the challenge which I've kind of been brought into. I've certainly had conversations about how to introduce like a product-led growth motion, and marketing and that tight integration has kind of been on there. But I think even when it is kind of proposed and it's like this is a challenge, I think I don't know whether people don't see it as a valuable challenge to solve, or they kind of just see other things that might be easier or a well-known path to solve, and there's maybe a desire to kind of go after some of those low-hanging fruits and things rather than some of the more tricky challenges.
That makes sense.
One of the things that I was just going to say, one of the things that I think is the biggest challenge from all across the marketing board with cybersecurity especially is firstly knowing who to hire, right? We have a problem in the UK where marketers are a dime a dozen and anyone can call themselves a marketer. You don't have to be trained in marketing. You might have just run some LinkedIn ads for your grandma's fish and chip shop, and now you're a marketer on LinkedIn. And I think that there's a lot of it's very difficult for companies who are non-marketing companies, for technical people to understand who they should hire and why they should hire those people. And I think that a lot gets overpromised. I've seen it before. I've seen complex cybersecurity get taken on by sort of generalist tech PR agencies, and the agencies have spent a lot of time just saying, what the fuck do we do with this, to the point where it's kind of easier to bring it in house. I'm also bilingual in French, and I think the sort of thing we need to watch for is, yes, it's easy to sort of come at solutions, but John, I want to ask you, like, what should people look for when they're looking for a marketing hire?
Ooh. Well, I mean, I guess one of the tricky things about marketing is that it's an industry as well as being a specific profession. So there are lots of people who work in marketing who are not actually marketers. Um, and as you said, many of them aren't trained. So for me, if you're bringing someone in, particularly as a first marketing hire, don't don't focus on the channels. If they're coming in and they've already got solutions for your business and they're not going to have a look to see what's happening in the market, then they don't understand marketing. They understand their channel. So, the classic of, as Amy said, bringing in the young girl because it always is, because misogyny, and leaving them to play with the socials because you think that's what it is. That's unstructured. That's just pure tactics. There's no strategy to that. So I think you need people that can understand the market, understand that you are in competition with lots of other companies that may or may not look exactly like you, and really put in place a research and then a strategic plan for how you are going to reach your market. And a lot of that comes down to niching. So, you know, there are too many businesses trying to be all things to all people, which means that you can't be enough things to enough people, and
That's
you can't be
that's
distinctive.
that's exactly what happened with our business, with my business. So we used to do loads of different services, and then we had a bit of a change of management, hence me being here. And I went, we can't keep doing all of these things because just marketing all of them things is ridiculous. If we were big enough we'd be able to market them easy peasy, because big companies have got enough people to do it. But as one company that's trying to make a mark, we decided to just totally niche down in what we were doing. So niche down on the product set, but then also niche down on on the marketing piece as well.
Yeah, smart move.
And it
Smart.
just
Well,
helped us like tighten up the brand, helped us work out what the brand voice was going to sound like, because I'm not trying to appeal to multiple different target customers. I'm trying to appeal to like two people who are the buying profiles.
yeah. No, good, smart move. Smart move. Yeah. So it's exactly what people should be thinking to do. So, you want marketers that can understand the market. That's why it's called marketing. It's not called social media posting or pay-per-click ad management. There are experts that do that, but you need a strategy first, I believe. So something else that we've been talking about is kind of, and I think it's relevant, particularly in this industry, which is relatively young, it's buoyant, it's growing, it's robust. Um, do we think there's a difference in approach based on the life stage of the business? Startups as opposed to established businesses?
From my perspective, so we're a startup still, so I think we are much more cheekier with our marketing. And as it's me, I'm willing to give anything a go. So I'm like, fuck it, we'll try it out. If it don't work, we're agile enough to switch to something else fairly rapidly if there's backlash off of it. But I imagine in later stage businesses where you've probably got like investors and stuff, you have to be a bit more serious, maybe, and have a bit more of a plan.
So, Robbie, you've worked with some established businesses. Yeah, how do they approach marketing, and do you think they could be doing better than they are even?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's the professionalization of a department over time, right? So I think startups, you tend to have people wearing many hats, and it's scrappy, and everyone just kind of does what needs to be done. And as you grow and you get on customers and you start to get revenue, people are like, oh, I don't want to wear so many hats anymore, so I'll hire and I'll put people here and there. And then, you know, at some point you might have that chief marketing officer or someone kind of very senior, and you know, there is the professionalization of that, and there's, you know, hopefully the more you're bringing in those hires and you're bringing in that experience, but then there's also the risk that, you know, you might lose that scrappiness, and that connection to the team and maybe even to the customer as well, and you kind of you can lose that thread. So yeah, it's kind of it's almost inevitable, but then I think there's the hard work of making sure that you don't lose that. And I think you know, people can always do better. So I guess to your other point in the question, but it's making sure that it's you know, it's well integrated, that people really understand it, that you're not siloing and you're just we'll do this by ourselves. Like, it has to be part of a bigger story. And you know, sometimes that internal communications is a big part of that as well. And you know, I think we kind of alluded to it earlier, like technical startups potentially just really focusing on the features, and you should buy us because we've got 20 more features than the next person, rather than what's the problem we're trying to solve. But I think part of it can be, you know, talking to marketing, talking internally to product and to engineering and other parts of the business to say, this is why we're doing it, this is the customer, this is the pain points, and like really focusing on that and making sure that the value that the customer is getting is really evident in the application as well, and not just buried.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And you said something earlier as well about kind of the aha moment, and you know, getting to the point of seeing that this is the thing that solves your problem, and that to me is the heart of product marketing fit, and it's the heart of kind of positioning. Yeah, I think that's great. Also, I'm looking at your Lego behind you.
Still got some to build. I would kind of say very often, you know, as a technical person, you know, I look at technical tools somewhat frequently, and I kind of have this notion of like, you've got until I finish my cup of coffee to convince me that I should carry on using this thing. So, you know, 15 minutes or so, I'm going to have a little play. If at the end of 15 minutes I'm like, I don't understand it, it's not working, I'm just going to trash it and get back to whatever I was doing. But if you can get that aha moment in that sort of first 5 minutes or so, then you know, can create a hook and that interest. Like, this is interesting. Like, I've got a problem. This might solve it. Right now, I want to spend more of it. Now, I'll carry on investigating it, or I'll ask some of my team to look at it. So I think that, you know, aha moment and that kind of first 5 minutes is, you know, is really crucial once you start to use it in those kind of tech spaces.
But I think that's really interesting, because usually I would say that was the salesperson's job. That's a sales function, what you're describing. If I'm on marketing, people don't sit on calls with potential customers. Salespeople sit on calls with potential customers. So I think Mike had put a comment in here earlier saying, should SDRs sit under the marketing umbrella because it's about brand awareness? 100%, yes, they should.
Yeah, I mean, I think marketing, to be honest, marketing should be setting up the opportunities for sales to close. That's what marketing exists to do, to educate the audience to why they should choose you, and that is the emotional, as much as probably more so than the functional. And then the SDRs can come in and sell the functional when they're interested. So marketing absolutely should be the top of it. So, you know, in my career, I've been, you know, kind of sales and marketing director at a few places, and it's two sides of the same coin. I've seen far too often a battle between sales and marketing, and there really shouldn't be. Marketing should be lining it up and sales should be closing it.
I would say one thing too, just on the startups and age point, maturity of business point, just to build on what Robbie said, and, you know, reference your long and short of it before, John. I think having seen this, like when I joined Index, I just spun out of the Emulex Corporation and management buyout, right? So you had a company that had money, that had a brand, lost that brand, and was clawing that brand back. And then I went on a few years after to sort of build up the marketing department in an AI company. And the differences of those two things was really incredible, because I think in the true startup sense, which was sort of the AI company, it was very much about the short of it. It was very much about, we need to get leads, we need to get wins, we need to get money. And so brand building advertising and brand building conversations were often sort of actively pushed away by leadership teams. Whereas what we saw with Index is, because they'd had a brand before, they understood the value of brand building. And I think, you know, what companies need to do, whether they're startup or whether they're mature, is making sure that they're thinking about both of those things at exactly the same time. And this is where it gets tricky. And much to John's point before about not all marketers being oh, not all people that work in marketing being marketers. You need to have someone who can understand that your long-term brand building will create long-term sales,
Yeah.
and you can also go after those short-term sales as well.
I
Yeah, I
mean, you
think
quite often get this challenge of, what's the ROI of brand marketing? And ROI is the wrong metric for establishing brand marketing. So ROI is about, the return on investment. I spend on an ad, how many dollars do I get through? For brand advertising, you're looking at OKRs, you're looking at growing the business. So, and if you're bringing in a senior marketer that doesn't know how to do that, going back to that point, then they're probably not the right person. But I've always kind of prided myself in being able to speak business to the business, having owned a business myself. And if I can't get the CFO to see the value of doing the brand marketing, then I've failed in my position as a marketer. I don't think it's difficult, but it's equally not simple.
I
Sorry,
think
Amy.
I'm going to say I think it's mega telling that the number one issue that cybersecurity companies are highlighting is sales. But if you think about, well, so there's Lewis Kempo says this, your sales problem now is a marketing problem that you had 6 to 12 months ago.
Oh, yeah.
So so they're not doing either of them, but they're reporting the sales issue as being the number one issue because that's like the oh shit. But then people, and I know plenty of companies that are like it where they've got to the point where they're getting no sales because they've got no inbound leads coming in, they've got no brand awareness, no one's coming to them and knows what the hell they do. But then they've now got to a point where they've not got any money, so they've got no money to spend on marketing. So then how the hell do you get yourself out of that hole?
Yeah, yeah, that's a bloody good point. And I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that nobody buys something that they don't know. There has to be some recognition. I mean, okay, every now and again, a random person might just pick something up off the shelf, but we know that there's something like kind of between 0 and 1, 0.67 correlation between awareness of a brand and purchase. It's important, and
I
you
think
only know of a brand because of marketing.
I think you buy stuff that you don't know when you go to the supermarket, like, but I'll also buy it amongst my the rest of my other shopping, so there's still some
Perfect.
familiarity there.
But
Oh,
let's
and
talk a little
walking
bit
and buy
about brand.
something new. Yeah.
Let's dive into brand, and then we can go into Q&A. So we talked about the lack of brand. We've talked about the need for distinctiveness. Um, yeah, how can we how can we project this? Amy, can you talk to me about a brand that has distinctiveness which helps?
Can I talk to you about mine?
You can talk to us about yours. This is great.
Awesome. Yeah, so when we designed our brand, and I know you think, you say logo and that kind of thing's like the visual stuff's not as important, but I think in cyber it's quite easy to stand out visually because as we saw, everyone's got a blue or dark blue actually, or dark green kind of color scheme going on. So when we got our brand designed by the graphic designer, I said, whatever you do, just don't make it blue. I don't care what color it is, but it's not going to be blue. So we went with bright yellow. Which is handily the color of your marketing report as well. But yeah, everything we do, all the stuff we do is bright yellow, stands out. We try to say that, because we're trying to bring fun to the industry. Like you said, it's a really serious industry. Why? Why is it a really serious industry? So when I've talked to, people at massive insurance firms, I've talked to banks, I go in and have exactly the same conversations with those people as probably I do with my mates in the pub on a weekend, actually. Because you know why? They're all just people. And I think that's the problem in B2B marketing. We forget, yeah, we're marketing to a business, but who works in the business? A
Yeah,
person works in the business. So you still got to talk like a fucking human instead of
absolutely.
talking like you're a robot. You're not talking to a computer, you're talking to another human who thinks things are funny or has emotions. Like we'll talk about emotional versus rational earlier.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, it's brought to mind a client that I worked with over the last couple of years. So it's a law firm. It's not one of the big four, but it is one of the kind of bigger law firms in London. And they all offer the same thing. Of course they do. Yeah, it's legal services. But from the research, what we discovered was that what their clients admired for the most and went back for was the fact that they always felt cared by or cared for by whoever their partner was that they were dealing with. And so when we launched a platform for their global investigations branch, so that's basically, it's almost kind of if ever you find yourself in the shit, the press is coming for you, your business, your livelihood, everything is at risk, they'll come in. And we ended up working with a copywriter and coming up with the strap line of handled with care. and it just suddenly broke through the emotion. And we
Mm.
talked a lot about kind of breaking through the emotion and making that emotional connection. Now, every law firm has expertise. Every law firm takes things seriously. Every law firm knows what they're doing. Every law firm is looking for the best outcome for you. But Adelshaw Goddard are handling you with care.
Yeah. Well, and you can translate it to cyber. So when you look at what the USPs are of nearly every cybersecurity company, it's innovative. You can't all be innovative. I refuse to believe that all of these are innovative. And as well, why is innovative always the thing that they all want to be? Because surely in cyber, if we're all if we're putting, some of our business's biggest or most important assets in the hands of cybersecurity, do we not want trustworthy over innovative? Because are they not kind of like
Yeah.
the opposite?
Play.
So we are actually doing a panel on this at a conference that I'm running at the end of October about whether
Plug
innovation
it.
is
Plug
risk.
it. Plug
Oh,
it.
plug it, yeah, okay, yeah. Right. So the event's called "Oh for fuck's sake." Um, we've got a fireside chat with actual fire. We've got a cyber comedian. We've got snack pairings with all of the talks. We've got a panel on burnout. We've got a panel on innovation, and then there's a cyber escape room and loads of tequila.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody. That is how you do marketing. So, I mean, there's some other stuff that we did want to talk about, but I think we should probably open up to the Q&A now.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a question here from Mike. How applicable do you think the refrain that people buy emotionally and rationalize logically is when you're selling through a multi-stage, multi-persona procurement function?
Oh, there's a big one. I think it's probably even more important, and this is why account-based marketing is a thing. So the whole point of account-based marketing, and Seb, we're working on this at the moment, as I alluded to earlier, is that you identify all of the decision makers in a purchase and you identify what matters to them. And you know, for example, that the procurement the procurement person is not going to have the same needs as the user, is not going to have the same needs as the head of department, is not going to have the same needs as the CFO. So it's coming up with one or more narratives that speak to each of those things because each of those people have an emotional need. So, procurement, they want to get it done. They probably want to beat you down for money. The head of department wants to know that their people are getting their job done better. The person using it wants to know that it's going to make their life easier. So again, that whole emotional approach and then using the rational to back that up is the way through. And again, going back to Jenny Romniak's quote, you need to be in the room to make the kind of rational argument, and you get in the room by being memorable and distinctive, which is an emotional thing.
Manuela says events in cybersecurity are more and more similar. How can we differentiate? And do you think gamification can be a way?
Amy.
Yeah, events are all the same. They are exactly that's exact. But what we do in our marketing is look at what everyone else is doing and go, fuck it, do the opposite. Like the exact opposite. So all conferences are inherently boring, and none of them have any fire or tequila. So we did the opposite and introduced both of those things and snacks. Yeah, I think we do need to make a bit more of a concerted effort to be a bit more interesting as an industry. It can't just be the same speakers, the same topics. Like everyone talks about AI. Everyone's talking about innovation. Everyone's talking about, I don't know, like zero trust, throwing out bullshit marketing words, um, which mean nothing. So I think it's time to put more of the human back into some of these things and have a bit more fun with it because you'll get a lot more engagement off the back of that.
Good point. Totally agree.
That's all the questions we've got at the moment, unless anyone has anything else they would like to throw into the chat. No pressure, of course. But what a way to put a room full of people on the spot.
I think Amy, you should put your conference link in the chat.
Oh, that's a good idea.
That's a very good idea. Very,
That is
very
a good
good.
idea. If there's any
Not
marketing,
exactly a safe for work search term.
well, technically, it's OFFS actually. In fact, I think Cameron's on this call now, so she could put it in if you've got it to hand. Unless I can get it from here. There we go. Is that it?
And of course, that's the brilliant paradox of everything that Amy does. Yeah, she is not safe for work, but she is safe for work, and it makes such a difference. It's such a distinctive voice. And I've known Amy for a little while, but even before I knew her, I'd see her stuff on LinkedIn, and it stands out. It's different. It's edgy and it's very Amy. And here's another thing: don't try to be Amy to be different. Be you.
Mm.
And that's quite important. I mean, for those of you that don't know me, which is probably most of you, so I do my own marketing, and I have a video series where I sit in front of a bin talking about marketing. Why? Doesn't matter, but nobody else is doing it. It's distinctive, it's memorable. And I go to events, people talk to me about the bins. So it does, kind of distinctiveness and differentiation aren't necessarily the same thing. It's good to differentiate, but you want to be distinctive as well so that people remember. So, Amy's yellow, my bins, all of these things are going to stand out and be remembered. And, kind of, again, when I talked about Adelshaw Goddard, their events were very different. So, the invites were very different. There were always kind of, Manuela talked about gamification. There was always something interactive there as well to break the ice, because one of the things that most events do badly is ice breaking. And that's the hardest thing to do and probably the most important thing to do, because most people go to events to network.
Yes.
Very sage advice.
Mike's asked another question.
He has. How often have you come across orgs that don't understand / identify, define rather, their own current client profile? From my experience, all the time, constantly. Just last month, I gave a workshop on how to niche, and there are a lot of people that didn't sort of understand how deep a niche should be, or how to define a niche. But one of the things that we talked about in that workshop was going back through and looking at your existing customers and figuring out what problems it is that you solve for them, and why they come to you for that problem. So I would say it's a sort of endemic thing in all industries, not even just in cyber, that people don't understand who they're selling to, or why they're selling to those people. There's very much sort of build it and they will come. But unfortunately, so many people have built things that build it and they will come doesn't really apply anymore. Even like Amy was talking about McDonald's before, right? They still advertise for a reason. I mean, now there's Jollibees and Popeyes and a million other places where you can get both a burger and the shits for less than a tenner.
Yeah, but not
Tell
many
me
that
I'm
does
wrong.
the shit, is there?
Well, it was that thing I posted on LinkedIn this morning. Rory Sutherland said it. You'd think the natural competitor to Coca-Cola would be another would be Pepsi Max, but actually Red Bull
Yeah.
is a bigger competitor to it, and it's like the opposite of it. It tastes shit, and it comes in a tiny can.
So I worked with a company last year who, I guess you'd call them retail logistics suppliers. So basically, they supply everything that you need as a retailer that you're not actually selling. So yeah, kind of toilet paper, hangers, you name it. And when we did some proper market research, and there's only about 8 companies in that sector, but stationery stores, Amazon, all of these self-serve things were coming up as where people were going to get the same solution. So quite often your competitor isn't someone that looks like you, it's someone that doesn't look like you, or more often than not, it's inertia. So understanding that and being honest about the commercial landscape is essential. And kind of niching is part of that. A lot of people will kind of say, well, I want to sell to everybody. You're not going to. You're not going to sell to everybody unless you're Mars and okay, I'm a diabetic, they're not selling to me, or bottled water. It's just unlikely. So focus down on where you can put your resources, understand your resources in terms of headcount, in terms of finances, and put them where you have the best chance of making the best profit, because marketing is about driving profit.
And don't be afraid to alienate the people that you don't want to work with.
Amen.
As we have time for one last question before we wrap up. How valuable do you think the buyer persona is beyond a buyer profile?
Personally, I don't think it's useful at all, because I think every single person is totally different. So I can say I want to sell to security awareness people, but they might all have the same challenges, but from a personal perspective, some of them are miserable as fuck and some of them are super interesting. And I like working with the interesting ones.
So I think personas have gone too far as a tool. So I think there is use in functional, practical personas. So, for example, going back to Seb and I's shared client at the moment. We know the geography, we know the type of company, industry they work in, we know the types of roles they need, and we know what their needs are. We don't need to give them nicknames. We don't need to talk about what they watch on TV. So too many personas are, this is busy Betty, and she likes drinking coffee in the morning and lap dancing at night. It's utterly irrelevant, and it's a misnomer. So I think
Wow, she's
persona.
called Amy, not Betty. Rude.
And there you go. So if you want to see Amy lap dancing at night and having coffee in the morning, go to the Oh for fuck's sake event. But yeah, I think that they're useful as a guide, particularly if you're doing very targeted marketing. I like that one, Mike. Betty is the stage name. Yes. Amy in the morning, Betty in the evening. But yeah, I think it is useful for account-based marketing. It's useful for targeting, um, but it's quite often taken too far. So I think on that, thank you to everyone that's joined us. Thank you, Robbie. Thank you, Amy, for joining us and sharing your expertise and knowledge. Thanks, Seb, for reading out the questions and being part of this. I hope you've all found it interesting. You can find us all on LinkedIn. We will be following up with an email which will give you a link to the report if you don't already have it, and to the video when we upload it. So have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, John.